Today we're going to talk about finding a property management company. You need to do it right at the start. You want to make sure they're the right scale for the size of portfolio you have. Be very clear on what you want the property management company to be doing and how to find out if they're reputable. It's a big part of real estate investing. To me, it's kind of what separates you from being able to make it long term and not is the actual operating of the building. In a market when everything's going up, then you just have to buy it and hold. It really doesn't matter. But when the market gets flat or vacancy goes up, that's when management really comes into play. And for myself, we had some small buildings and we had a third-party management in one of them. And this is kind of where we learned our lesson. Like initially, we wanted the lowest fee, right? So I think he charged 4% instead of 5%. And initially, it looked okay. We had higher repair and maintenance costs, but the building was generally full. Maybe 6 months to a year in, we started having a lot of problems with the tenants and we noticed turnover was very high. And when we moved to the city and took management over ourselves, that's when we kind of seen, behind the curtain. And he had basically just used a bunch of different subsidy groups to get people in. And he didn't care about the quality of tenant or, the fact that they were trashing units, moving out in a couple months. Like it was a really bad situation. And when we weren't here on the ground, to see it every day, that was something that for a while worked and we couldn't tell. But then once we took over, it took, probably a year to properly stabilize that building, to get rid of all of those tenants, re-renovated it. You had to change the whole culture of the building. So it can really make a big impact on the investment. You need to keep in mind when hiring a property management company, if they're only making 5% and your rent roll's $100,000, that's $5,000 for the entire year that they're going to make on that property, unless they're upcharging you for a bunch of other stuff. And that's pretty unrealistic, right? Like somebody's not going by that property very often for $500. Like if they need to cover the property management salary of $60,000, think of all the buildings they need just to break even, just to make $60,000. They need 12 buildings that size. So it's a very low margin business. And so if you're hiring third party and you don't have scale, that's something you really have to keep in mind. How can you incentivize them to get good tenants? Like if they're willing to work with you on certain metrics, maybe they make a little bit more if turnover's less, right? So we track that with our own company, and that's something we're really proud of is our turnover is, way less than the market. But we do it for ourselves, so there's a big incentive there, right? And that's going to be your biggest cost as an owner is generally going to be turnover. If you have third party, usually they're going to charge you to move somebody new in. You have to market the unit, you have to renovate it, you have to get the other person out. So someone has to go there, do a move out and a move in report, all of that stuff that, takes a lot of time. So if you can somehow align the management company to either track turnover or maybe you incentivize them to have lower turnover, I wouldn't go with the lowest person in the market. There's probably a reason they charge less. So if you're going to go third party, you're just going to have to eat some of those fees, and maybe it costs a little bit more, but long term, I think it's going to be better for the investment. The other thing to look at is what your scale is, right? Because the company that's going to manage a 200 unit tower is a completely different organization than you want to manage a 10 unit, walk up building. The 10 unit one, you want kind of all around handymen that can go there and fix things. And with the bigger properties, you need specific HVAC company and all the different trades. So they're two totally different things. One reason that we haven't done third-party management ourselves is it's kind of hard, with most businesses or building owners, you could drive by the building and see if it's in good shape. And you'd say, oh, I want them to manage my property. The problem with third-party management companies is it's their name on the sign, but they're not directly in control of what gets spent on that property. So if I was a third-party manager working for an owner and he runs out of money and says, hey, we're going to cut the grass once every 4 weeks instead of once a week, and the weeds start coming up and the building starts getting run down, me as a property manager, unless I get rid of him as a client, can't really control that. So it does make it hard when you're shopping for sure. For smaller property managers, you can't just drive by the building or go to the building and assume that it's a property manager's fault that it looks the way it does, right? So, that kind of right from the beginning, you need to decide if it's something you're going to be involved in, if you're going to try to scale to 100 or a couple hundred units and you want to do this full time, you want to be involved in the management, you're going to probably hire somebody different and be a lot more involved than if you're just going to buy, maybe a 10 or 15 unit every couple of years and hold a few properties and be very hands off. So when you're trying to align with the property management company, it all depends, I guess, on their structure, what they're willing to do. But I would always offer to pay a bit more so that they're not, because there's almost an incentive for most property management companies to have turnover higher, because usually they're going to get paid for a new move in. And the vacancy, like if it sits empty for 1 or 2 months, isn't going to equal the same as, they're going to make a lot more moving somebody new in. So that's where if you can align with them and say, hey, instead of like, we understand you guys have to make money, if we just set a metric of, 20% turnover instead of 30%, and as long as we stay in that range, 20 to whatever number you decide to set for the property, then we're going to pay you X amount more, and try to make that in line with what they'd make if they were moving new tenants in all the time. I think doing something like that for them, it's going to be less work, and hopefully they can make the same amount of money. That's going to be massively beneficial for the owner. So if you can align something like that and just find those metrics that are going to work, right? Turnover is a big one. Vacancy obviously is one that everyone's going to track. And just quality of tenant is going to benefit both them having a lot less headaches in the building and you having that higher turnover. The other thing to keep in mind or to look for is how the maintenance is getting done. A lot of property management companies will also have, a maintenance division, and you want to make sure that they're, again, in line with where the market is, right? Because they could be sending their maintenance guy there all the time for small little things and racking up bills, benefiting them. It's not benefiting you as an owner. On bigger projects, like I've seen some where, they're using companies they always use or friends. And if you're not keeping your eye on the ball, you can get charged a lot more for something than maybe the market would be. So you want to make sure that if maybe it's something over $10,000, you want to see 3 separate quotes, right? Or maybe you have an HVAC company or a company you like to use prior to getting a property management company, and you can request that they use them. But the maintenance side can be a big one too, who's cutting the lawn, all of those things, where if they're doing it all in-house, usually it should be cheaper than if they're going out to the market and doing it. But you just want to make sure that maybe you're getting other quotes just to see. There's lots of little things with property management that if you're not really, really dialed in, can just slip by. And here's an example just with our company. We noticed that our 2 townhome projects, it just seemed like traffic had slowed down quite a bit. And it didn't make a lot of sense. The market's still really good. And we just weren't getting the showings and the viewings that we usually do. And we found that the platform we use to advertise our units had switched them from where it would show that they're a townhome, and it just said apartment. So anybody who was searching townhomes, those ads wouldn't pop up, and anyone who was searching apartments would see it, but it would look like it was way too expensive because it would be the price of a townhome at the apartment rent. So something like that, if we just didn't catch that for a year, would have cost us, tens of thousands of dollars, and we would have just thought we would have kept paying more for advertising. But it was just a little thing on the back end that had got switched. So hands-on property management really does make a big difference. And if you find that right company, they'll do it for you. But it's going to help for you to be involved in checking all the stuff and making sure that the property's running the way you want it to. So if you're looking for a new property management company or you're new to a market, there's a couple things you can do. One is I would ask for referrals, and that can be tough because they're probably going to give you the clients that like them the best, but it's similar to when you're looking for a new tenant. You try to get referrals of the last couple. So if you ask for a few business or building owners that have them as management companies, you can call and ask them, or you can try to find that information out on your own. The other thing is get somebody or you can do it yourself. Go secret shop it. Go look at a couple units, see how their on-site manager shows the unit. If it presents well, if they do a good job, that's very easy to kind of see how they're doing, and it doesn't cost anything to do it. So those would be 2 things I would do. You can still drive by all the properties and just make sure they're upkept, right? Because it kind of gives a bad name if the same company who has a bunch of rundown buildings and their names on the building, it's going to be the same name on your building. So, there's definitely companies in the city that have a bad reputation, and I wouldn't want their sign on my building. So that makes a big difference. Most people don't know the owner, the management company. So look at the properties that they have, go secret shop it, and try to talk to some of the owners that already have them as their property management company. If you're going to get third-party managers, that's something you want to start right away. As soon as you have a building under contract or you're looking at some, you could already start, shopping around. But get that figured out right at the beginning. And then for sure, if you have a building under contract, because there's going to be that time where you're going to take over. And whenever you take over a new building, it's very hectic. And if you don't know what you're doing, it can cause a lot of headaches if you try to bring in a property management company after. So get that put in place right at the beginning. Do your due diligence. Find a company that you're, comfortable with or that has a good reputation in the market. Again, don't try to underpay them. Pay a fair price so that they're doing a good job. And if you can find the right one, it can be a really good relationship. If you're planning to grow your portfolio, they want to grow theirs, you can work really well together. So that's something just right at the beginning, find the right company.